All right, everybody, we are live, and thank you all for joining us tonight right here on our Zoom. And we are with none other than my partners in crime. It is Wayne Carter and Tony Winger. We are the kings of conversation, and we're bringing to you this night's special edition of, we are with our brothers here right now. Tonight is the one and only NAGA. We've got NAGA here with us tonight. It is Alan Cowell, who is a NAGA member in Philadelphia. And then we've got the co-founder of Black Bottom Gun Club, Detroit, Michigan, Mr. Chad King. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Gentlemen, how are you all doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent.
All
Alan
well
King,
here.
how you doing tonight, my brother?
Everything is good on this end.
Excellent, excellent. And my co-host, Wayne Carter, how you doing tonight?
Ho, ho, ho. This is what I do, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
Winger, you in the house, Winger?
Yeah, you know, he sound like he had just came out of the locker room, you know, just hit
Yes, sir.
Excellent, man.
Score some touchdown or shoot some 3-point jumpers.
Well, listen, we're glad to have everybody with us tonight. And tonight, this is brought to you by Not Reaching. Everybody go to www.notreaching.com to find out more about what this device is about and about this movement. And tonight we've got NAGA here with us. And we, first of all, gentlemen, I cannot start this show without talking about the death of Ahmaud, who was just gunned down in Georgia. And I just want to really quickly go around the table because it's impacted me. So many of these things have been happening over the course of since Trayvon Martin. It just seems like there's been just so much of this happening, but for some reason, this just struck a chord with me this week, this time. This brother was simply jogging in a neighborhood and was gunned down like a dog. And I just want to get you guys' take on this before we move forward and to get your take on it. And you guys can jump in. I'll start with our guest, our main guest, Chad King. How did you feel about this, man?
So when I heard about it, it's really weird because I believe that after seeing these things happen so many times over and over again, some folks may become desensitized to it, right? And they're like, damn, another one, right? A lot of people have that type of reaction. I never had that reaction because it's not something I ever want to get used to. So I didn't have that reaction this time. I think that was, and when I first read the article and heard about it, and then heard about it again as far as it, becoming popular again in the news, I was very, very upset. I was very pissed. Just to be quite frank, and I'm sorry if I'm using too strong language, but I was pissed. And then the video came out of what happened, and I generally try to guard my gates. I try not to consume a lot of that kind of stuff because it can be damaging to the psyche of a person.
Right.
But I watched this one, and I went from pissed to enraged.
Yeah.
Right. It's enraging that this happened. It's enraging that we saw quite literally a modern day 2020 version of what a lynching is.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I wrote the statement for the Midwestern region, so I'm also the Midwest Regional Director for the National African American Gun Association. And so when I began to think about a statement that we could put out for, reflective of this, I was at a loss for words. And those who know me know that I'm very, very verbose, and that doesn't often happen. But there was not much that I could really say. There wasn't a whole lot that, for me anyway, was adequate. So instead, I put up 7 instructions. There's no statement. There's no trying to understand it. There's no trying to rationalize it. There's no trying to keep an inventory of racism and racist behaviors anymore. No, none of that. I only gave out a couple of instructions. Get armed, get trained, get licensed, know your state gun laws, love yourself and love the people around you, and make it a really bad day for anybody who tries to threaten your life or the lives of those you love ones.
Right, right.
So for me, it's always, you know, been past the point of trying to explicate this stuff. Races are going to do what races are going to do. And for us as African Americans, we need to do what we need to do to protect ourselves from racist violence. And so for me, there is no more talking about, you know, why is this happening to us, or trying to understand the pathology of racists. I don't care about the pathology of racists anymore. It's far, for me anyway, again, past time to look at what are the actionable steps that we can do to feel safe and secure in our own bodies. And for me, what that looks like is being armed and being able to protect myself and my loved ones. It's unfortunate that Brother Arbery was assassinated and killed and lynched in this way. I think for us as a community of Black folks, we ought to have the same mentality that Jewish folks had after the Holocaust: never again. And we have to keep that at the forefront, that never again will we allow this to happen to ourselves or one of us. Very good.
Alan, what's your take on that, Alan?
Well, you know, my sentiments are pretty much the same as Chad's, but, you know, I'm just so glad that someone was in the area with a cell phone. Just in 2012, the Pew Research Center did a research on African-American gun ownership, and they found that about 29% of African-American households even were interested in having a gun in the house. And you go forward to 2015, that percentage of African-American gun owners has gone up to 59%. And I am sure 5 years later, I'm sure that percentage is continuing to creep up for that very reason. We need to be armed, but we need to also know our laws.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Wayne, what was your take on that, Wayne?
Mike, I'm real cautious at this point with a lot of my take and my feelings about the whole situation, because I think this is a time where we continue to get divided, you know, because everybody has an opinion of the incident. But the main thing that I want people to look at is the next step of this thing, which is going to court. You know, so what we have to understand is, you know, with all this trauma, and these dudes should actually be prosecuted to the fullest. They need to, you know, be prosecuted to the fullest. But along with that, we got to look at the prosecution. You know, the prosecutors that's going to actually handle this case. You know what I mean? We want to keep this at a first-degree murder. You know what I mean? But you got prosecutors that will go in here and they will move this down to second degree or manslaughter, because they're going to try to paint this boy who he isn't. And if you can get that jury to just put a doubt in their minds, this is where we always lose. You know, with this is why I feel sometimes some of these things continue to happen, because once it gets to court, we're not represented the right way, because the law was not built for us. So when we see it's, you know, situations like this and incidents like this that happens, it takes away from the real punishment, because we know we will never be put in front of a jury of our peers. You know, so them moving down the case from one county to another county, how helpful is that? You know what I mean? So, because I really feel these men need to be prosecuted to the fullest. And sometimes I don't think that really happens. And I think we need to really, they're the kind of things that we need to focus on even after this, because there's going to be another time that this will happen again. Like we said with other incidents. Now we're right back at the same place we were when this happened before with other incidents. So, you know, it's a lot to be said. It's a lot of evidence that continues to need to be brought up. And I think sometimes we need to focus on them type of things, like the next step. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing we can do with what happened. You know what I mean? But we can make stuff happen at the next step. You know, so these kind of things don't continue to happen. If you start punishing people the right way, these kind of things will stop. But as long as the punishment is not harsh enough, it's the same thing when you was little. You know that when you got a bad beating, you stop doing what your mom told you not to do. You know, so these kind of, when you're not punished, and you're not, given the right punishment, then, these are the type of things that continue to happen, and they're going to continue until we get to that point to show you we're not playing with you. If you want to play with guns, you want to shoot guns, this is what you're going to have to deal with.
Very good. Tony Winger.
Man, I got a list. First of all, I want to echo what Brother Allen said. Time's up. Ain't no more nonsense. I don't want to do no more marching in those streets. I don't want to do none of that. Back in the 60s, the Black Panthers showed up on the steps of the Capitol over there in Oakland, I think it was, with shotguns, and that made them people nervous. And the bottom line is that the laws have always been designed to keep us from protecting ourselves. One of the things that's back on the NAGA website, it gives a timeline. And in the 1700s, it talks about it having been illegal for Black folks to own firearms, or they would beat them if they had anything that looked remotely like something that they weren't supposed to have.
Cane or anything, yeah.
Yeah. So
canes, dogs, all of that.
Yep.
But part of the problem is as I see it, and have seen it for quite some time, is that people on the continent of what is now called Africa, people on this North American continent, the indigenous people to those continents were, from my understanding of history and my research, were always loving and caring people. So when people showed up, they opened their arms. That's why them folks up in Massachusetts, them Indians got sick and disease and all that other stuff that the Europeans brought. I say all of that to say this: every man has a right to protect himself. My grandmother said, "Self-preservation is the first law of nature." And at this juncture, at the risk of sounding a bit more radical than I probably need to, I don't care. I don't want to hear no more. The evidence says to me that they understand that the court system is in their favor. These guys down there in Brunswick, Georgia, the father was a investigator or some sort of police officer, some sort of law enforcement person, retired or something, and all that this happened back in February.
Yeah.
And this is now at the end of April. They just going to jail, really? So there's too much old boy network and all that kind of stuff. I said all of that to say this, which I spoke earlier about Kyle, and I don't think Chad was on yet. But what are some of the things that keep firearms out of the hands of Black people, Black folks? I know, and on that form, I think it's the ATF 4473 or one of them ATF forms you got to fill out. I just went through that when I purchased another firearm, and I found out recently that the questions those questions weren't there before, and now they are, and that's the question of ethnicity. So they want to know if you're Black, white, Hispanic, white, non-Hispanic, all those other things. What's the purpose of that? Why are they tracking who has what race has what? What's the purpose for that? I looked at the questions, and I have the questions in front of me. The first question says, are you under indictment or information in any court for a felony or any other crime for which the judge could imprison you for more than 1 year? Well, I know a lot of Black folks that got that issue. Are you a fugitive from justice? Have you ever?
So what we want to do, Tony, is you want to hold those questions for a second.
Okay.
Because we want to get those questions answered. We want to move off this topic because everybody's giving their weight in on this murder. And what we want to do is we've got a few questions. We just want to go down the basic list of questions because Tony's questions are going to be some more in-depth questions that we want to get to as we find out some of these medial questions, which is, first of all, I want to get to Chad King. Okay. Chad, why was NAGA created?
So the purpose of the National African American Gun Association is really to establish a fellowship of Black gun owners, a fellowship where we can be authentically ourselves while shooting and enjoying sport shooting, hunting, training for self-defense, and really advocating for our position within the framework of the Second Amendment conversation in America. That's really kind of like the driver of it, right? There weren't very many organizations, well, that I'm aware of anyway, and I came aboard in 2017. And I found out about it shortly after the Philando Castile killing in Minnesota, St. Paul, or Falcon Heights, rather, excuse me. But it was established because there was a void there for Black folks who own guns. I mean, that's really, it's as simple as that. And when I say a void, there are other organizations that Black folks are a part of and could have been a part of, right? But I don't think, in my opinion, there wasn't one that really spoke to the needs and the urgency that Black folks had relative to the Second Amendment. No one of those organizations really spoke to the unique history of the Black tradition of arms that was, in a way, hidden by a lot of anti-gun agenda within the Black community, or that was impressed upon the Black community the way it was, that kind of, snuffed out that history that we have with being able to use firearms and for our self-defense. So for me, that's what the National African American Gun Association was created for, to fill a void and to be a voice and a platform for the Black American gun owner.
Gotcha. Alan Kyle, why should I become a member of NAGA?
Well, this is an organization which is an association with a focus on family. As Chad was saying, it was put together by our CEO, Philip Smith, to expose, educate, and motivate, and to get families involved, to teach them gun safety, and also to teach them that there are some fun that can be had with guns, and they're not necessarily made for killing. Hunting can be a part of that, but target shooting is a good way to teach the young folk about safety and proper handling of guns, and also stressing the importance of cleaning them once you fire them.
Excellent, excellent. I want to get back to Chad. Chad, tell me about the principles of NAGA. Explain to us about the principles of NAGA.
So first and foremost, I'm going to say that one of the key principles of NAGA, obviously, is firearm safety and the education piece, right? There are a lot of folks who are to one degree or another somewhat rudderless in terms of, when you purchase a firearm, what's next? Well, for us, we want to be able to educate you on the proper safety and safe handling of firearms. First and foremost, the safe use of firearms. That's a huge, I want to say that's probably the biggest component of it. Another huge component of it is bringing back or revitalizing the history of the Black tradition of arms among our people. One of the things, and I believe, for me personally, that's my favorite aspect of the organization, is the emphasis on that history. Because who would have known that W.E.B. Du Bois was a person who was an advocate in that way? Who would have known? I didn't know before I joined NAGA that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a person who advocated for armed self-defense. Even though he took a nonviolent posture, he understood that, having a firearm wasn't necessarily being not nonviolent. It's more so about protecting yourself and your family, and your community, right? I think so. Education, understanding the history of it, making sure that African Americans are in a position to be able to exercise their right with the full understanding of what the laws are for their state and for their municipality. So one of the things that we do in the organization, in particular in the Black Bottom Gun Club chapter, every quarter we have a legal seminar, so that the legal seminars are free, and the legal seminars provide the community, whoever shows up, a basic outline of what you can and cannot do with the firearm. So that if you purchase a firearm, you're able to know what your laws are and what you can and can't do, what's expected of you, what's required of you, things of that nature. So the primary component, I believe, is education. There's advocacy, obviously. We as an organization, we've provided several amicus briefs to Supreme Court cases that have been very, very well done by our legal counsel, Nazita Davis. I'm going to give her a shout out. She's absolutely a brilliant legal mind in terms of what she's put together and packages for the Supreme Court. So there's the education, the history, the advocacy. There's the competition in sports shooting. I know several members of the Atlanta chapter. They participate in Glock Shooting Sports Foundation up here. We have people who participate in International Defensive Shooting Association. The training director for our club is pretty much a championship shooter, champion caliber shooter. We also have members who shoot trap and skeet, right? Up here in Michigan, we have the oldest Black-owned gun club in the country. It sits on 40 acres, and it's a trap and skeet. Exactly right, 40 acres. It's the oldest Black-owned gun club in the country, and things like that. Getting more of us involved in not just the advocacy, but also making sure more of us are arming to defend ourselves and our family and our loved ones and community, making sure that we are participatory in competition, making sure that we know our gun laws. And really what the Second Amendment is about, rather, from, in my opinion, from the African American perspective, is really about being fully enfranchised. Voting, education, and gun rights were some of the key things that were denied to our ancestors historically. And so I always tell everyone, we're here to claim everything that our ancestors were denied, including the right to bear arms. So those are the kind of guiding principles as I interpret them for the National African American Gun Association.
Great. I got one more question, and I'm going to turn this over to Tony Winger. This is over to Alan Kyle. Alan Kyle, were you ever a member of NRA?
I was.
And why did you decide to change your membership to NAGA?
Well, if you're familiar with the organization, you know they had 2 magazines that you can select one that you would get on a regular basis. And I chose the National Rifleman. And in 1999, in that magazine was, in the centerfold, a breakdown of every Republican that was running for office, and their names was in red. And every non-Republican that was running for office, the name was in sort of a grayscale, but there was emphasis in red lettering for every member to vote for every one of the Republican members. That was the last time I was a member of the NRA. I was in void for a number of years until Philip Smith decided to launch this organization in Black History Month. As a matter of fact, we just a couple of months ago celebrated our 5th year anniversary. But it was until then that I began to kind of get reinterested in gun advocacy.
Excellent, excellent. I want to turn it over to Tony because Tony's got some great questions. He's taken the time to compile. Tony, what do you got for us?
Greetings, gentlemen. One of the first questions one of the first things with owning any firearm or having a firearm or possessing a firearm, being in a possession of a firearm, is safety. Could you gentlemen speak to what may seem to be common sense? A lot of people don't know some of this, speak to some of the simple safety rules of owning a firearm.
Well, I'll speak to one. One of the things I learned back in my military days is you never pointed at anything you don't intend to shoot at.
Excellent. Right.
I'll say that obviously there are some quote unquote universal safety rules, right? That everyone who purchases a firearm or is considering purchasing a firearm should be aware of. Things like make sure that you treat the firearm as if it's loaded at all times. Make sure that you don't point it at anything you don't want to kill or destroy. Make sure you keep your finger off the trigger. Make sure the firearm is safe or safe to operate or unsafe. Make sure that you're using stuff like the correct ammunition. Make sure that you know what's in front of your target, behind your target, around your target. Make sure you don't try to catch a falling firearm, right? A lot of those things, as a gun owner, right, kind of make it seem like it's common sense, but when someone grabs a firearm for the first time, one of the first things they do is wrap their finger inside the trigger guard and begin to put their finger on the trigger as a new person. I've seen it a couple of times. And I think that, you know, ingraining the safety procedures and safety protocols into new gun owners is vital to making sure that they don't hurt themselves or someone that they care about, or they don't hurt themselves or someone that they care about. So I'll say that from a safety perspective, that's certainly one, but I also think some of the soft skills are important, or the mindset, having a safety-oriented mindset is as important, so that you can execute those safety rules, right? You want to make sure that just because you have a gun doesn't mean that you should go into a place that you probably normally wouldn't go to, because you have a gun now. If you wouldn't go there if you didn't have a gun, you probably shouldn't go there because you do have a gun now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And definitely the training piece is I think is another piece of it as well. Meaning, just because you have a gun doesn't mean that you're equipped to deploy it in a contingent situation. It doesn't mean that you know how to you know automatically what to do because you have a firearm. It requires training. It requires a learning process, and you should embrace that so that you can best take care of yourself and your family.
Very good.
Absolutely. Chad, before I go, are you a veteran as well?
I served for a little bit in the United States Navy Reserves.
Okay. Okay. Did you go to boot camp?
Yes, I went to boot camp.
And you're a veteran.
Okay.
I was in the Navy too, so I just wanted to check that. Let's see here. What are some of the challenges that affect African Americans in purchasing a firearm?
I think probably the biggest challenge is stigma and stereotype. Really, a lot of it has to do with how we've been socially conditioned or socialized to perceive firearms. I think that's a huge force of inertia to work against, especially when you have things like the crime bill and the demonization of the Black tradition of arms subsequent to the Vietnam era, going into the drug and crack epidemic, where violence was rampant relative or as a result of drugs in the streets. I think that there's certainly the stigma and stereotype of Black man or Black person with a gun automatically equates to a criminal or a thug. So there's that piece of it that we've been socially conditioned to accept, both internally and externally. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we have to get over and lose. The other impediment, I believe, is in some instances, this hyper machoism where, again, we think that we can do these things with the firearm, or that we should do things with the firearm that we normally would not do. So I think that on one hand, there's a social conditioning piece of it that is in no part our own fault. That's just being Black in America. But the other part of it, I think that we can do some work on internally, not only is some of the social conditioning as Black gun owners who represent the positive side of Black gun ownership and doing community work and being safe with firearms and teaching our women and children and our brothers to use these things safely in a way where they can, again, be their authentic selves. I think that's important. But the other piece of that we can do is the shedding of ego relative to firearms as well is equally important work. So I think those two things, stereotype and social conditioning and ego, are the biggest impediments. Now, if you're talking about legal impediments,
I was getting to that next.
Yeah, if you're talking about legal impediments, then there's a whole slate of things that are legal impediments, right? So you're talking about some of the laws relative to prison and imprisonment, right? So if you have certain types of felonies or misdemeanors, you cannot get a firearm. You can't purchase a firearm, right? And while some of that is okay for some violent offenders or things like that, a lot of it doesn't really allow a path to redemption, and it does not allow for full enfranchisement after you've served your time. So I think there are definitely some legal impediments that should be moved out the way, and you can do that by way of expungement in certain cases, but even that can be costly and expensive. So I would say there's obviously the legal piece of it. There's the social condition and stereotype piece, and there's the ego piece.
Absolutely. I saw that, by the way, I was also an NRA member, and I just let that go once I started digging into what they were doing.
How long were you a member, Tony?
For as long as my membership ran out.
What was that, 2 years, 4 years? I have no clue.
It was 2 years, I think.
2 years? Okay.
really, it was because that's the range that I went to when I went back to refamiliarize myself with firearms. And I went to a local gun shop, and they had some classes and what have you. And I said, you know what, regardless of what I think I know, let me go and take a class to really refresh myself properly. And so I went, I took the course, and applied for my concealed carrying, you know, all that comes with that. But being a part of it, that was the range that they took us to, the NRA range. So I said, well, let me just join the NRA. But I let that go. And so now I'm going to make sure I get my NAGA thing straight. I got some questions to answer before we start. The three things that I saw that really, which both of you gentlemen have spoken on, what I saw from the NAGA website is that the purpose is to expose, educate, and motivate. Can you, either of you gentlemen, you kind of can we talk about those three things? How do we expose? What processes are in place to educate and motivate African Americans in gun ownership?
And then after that, we're going to move up to Wayne. Kyle, Alan, you want to take that?
I can do my best. I think, you know, Chad is fortunate because he's affiliated with a gun club, and it's kind of hard to expose new members to the safety aspect of firearms unless there are classes available and ranges available. In my area where I live, a lot of the ranges that are available require you to be an NRA member before you can even join the club. So it makes it kind of tough to get groups of people where you can do some exposing and some motivating and some educating. But there is a new one in the area now that doesn't seem to play that game. And I've been fortunate enough to take a couple of my friends and have gotten them interested in becoming a member. I don't have any little kids in my family, but I just think that if there's a family involved and anyone is interested, the education that is available through the organization is endless, but it's just a matter of having a place where you can actually do the hands-on educating.
If I can, I'll try to touch on that and be brief. I know I can be kind of verbose, so I'll try to pare it down some. So those ideals of educating, exposing, and motivating, right? So the education piece is obvious. I think, well, the education and the motivating piece kind of go hand in hand. And I'll say that because a lot of the education we do, aside from the safety piece, is on the history of the Black tradition of arms. And I think that once Black folk begin to understand our role within the broader context of the Second Amendment, how it was originally not meant for us, right? It wasn't meant for us to begin with. And then how we were able to use it on several occasions successfully for our freedom and advancement. And the people who did so, I think the education piece of it can be hugely motivating. I think also when you pair the exposure and the motivation, that pairs well as well. Meaning when it is really interesting. So we have a membership that's growing and continues to grow. One of the things that I always find interesting is that when a new person comes into our meeting, and in the past, before the COVID-19 stuff, our meetings were always open to the public. When someone comes in for the first time and they see a room full of Black men and women in a meeting who are at a range and are going to go and shoot afterwards, and we're talking about things we're doing in the community to help our community, and we're talking about the things that we're going to do to train to improve our own skill sets, right? When you have a new person come in and see the look on their face when they look around and see a bunch of other Black folks who are armed and who are practicing and training, that's incredible. That exposure is itself motivating. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Hey, Mike, so a couple questions, because you guys did cover a couple of the questions that I had. But one question I did want to ask is, what is your women? How do you train your women in NAGA? Like how is the training for them, how do they go about being part of, you know, that training if they're a member? Like, what type of training do you have for women?
So the membership base for the National African American Gun Association, our group is mostly women. It's roughly 58, 60% women. So they have a huge role in being trained and being armed, and actually teaching as well and training. So in the Black Bottom Gun Clubs, more specifically, we have, we just picked up one instructor who's a woman, a Black woman who's an instructor. We have Black women who shoot competition. We have at least 3 or 4 Black women who are range safety officers. Our club manager is a Black woman. So the communications director for the national organization is a Black woman. The legal counsel for the national organization is a Black woman. We have Black women who are chapter presidents, right? So I think that there's plenty of space and opportunity for women to get the training from women. Up in Detroit, we have a ladies' range day that's managed and proctored by one of our range safety officers with some instructors to assist, right? And she runs it from top to bottom in terms of scheduling the ladies to come and shoot, advertising it for them to come and shoot, having them doing the safety briefings. We absolutely include women in this because women are parallel in this fight for freedom. They always have been. And so I don't think there's anything better than an armed Black woman who's ready to have your back and cover you as need be.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Kyle, what I wanted to ask you is, actually, I know where you're from. You're from the Chester County area. Is there a chapter there for you guys?
No, there is not. I am a member of the Philadelphia chapter. They meet at the Robert Brown Elliott Gun Club, which I have never been. And I've been fortunate that there are a couple of indoor ranges close enough to me that this is where I go when I need to familiarize myself with my handgun.
Is it difficult for you to be able to start a chapter in that area, or how's that process? Do you know anything about that?
I looked into it, and it didn't go very far because the Philadelphia chapter doesn't have a large membership, and I was sort of told that until they begin to grow, there's no point in starting another one that's only 40 miles away.
Oh wow! Well, I mean, the only way to do grow is to start them in other places.
Well, my point exactly, but once it came from the top, I shut up.
How long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking? And I like to speak before you answer that. I'll just say that we can talk offline about that.
Okay.
Because starting a chapter, I won't say that it's simple, but it doesn't necessarily have to be difficult. I would say a good idea is if you have folks around you who want to have a community to shoot with, that's always a good start. Once you have that community of folks who want to, who want to shoot with you, then I think will be an opportune time to start a chapter. And that process is not entirely difficult. You would start with an email or a contact to either the regional director or the director of our chapters within the organization, or a vice president or president. You start with contacting them. From there, if there's not one in your area, usually anywhere between 30 and 50 miles, depending on population density, there's a lot of factors that play into it. But if you have a group, a core of folks who want to shoot with you on that level, a community of shooters with you, reach out to the national office. Then go ahead from there. What you'll do is you'll have to submit a background check because we want to make sure that those who are going to be chapter leaders are of a good character and things like that. So you submit a background check. You have at least 1 or 2 interviews with either the regional director and or either the vice president or director of chapters, just to see where you're at. They'll gauge your experience from that conversation and all of that kind of stuff. If things go well, then you can get a chapter started. But I think a key piece of it is making sure that you have, even if it's a small group of folks who want to have a community of shooters to participate. Right.
Well, I did send an inquiry to the link on the website, and that's when I got a phone call. I never got a response, but I got a phone call from the chapter president in Philadelphia, and that's where it stopped.
Okay. like I said, we can talk a little bit offline about that,
Right.
About how I kind of facilitate chapter creation and development, at least in the Midwest region. I can let you know my process, and then we can go from there and see what we can do where you're at.
Well, we need to exchange some contact information. We can stay in touch.
For sure.
I have one more question, kind of going into another direction, but
Go ahead.
if felony or a misdemeanor, can you still be part of NAGA?
Felony or I don't know that. I haven't heard that question come up.
If you have a felony or misdemeanor and you're unable to purchase or own a firearm, then no, you wouldn't be able to. If you're unable to own or purchase a firearm, then I won't say it defeats the purpose of it, because there's still community involvement you can be a part of. But generally speaking, you have to be eligible to own and purchase and own a firearm to be a member of the National African American Gun Association.
Very good.
That goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and some of the questions on that form. You know, are you under indictment for? Have you ever been convicted of a felony or any of those things? If you answer yes to any of those questions, you're not getting a firearm.
Correct.
Period. That's not going to happen. And you know, when you start looking at racial disparities in the prison, you know, I saw something not too long ago. It says that African American women are incarcerated 5 times more than white women. You know, so it's clearly they looking to make sure they lock us up or stamp us or tag us so that we can't purchase a firearm. In my mind.
And Tony, it goes a little deeper than that. Even if you pass that background check and you're able to purchase a firearm, there are several states who are still, may issue or shall issue, and there's a lot of those may issues still out there. And so the states have their own way of keeping you from getting a concealed carry.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I was just on the phone with someone a couple of days ago in their particular state. Once you get the permit to own a firearm, they run a background check every day on who you. They run a background check on you every day to get, once you have a permit to own a firearm. Then if you get a concealed handgun license, they run 2 background checks on you per day. I don't know how, if that's transcribed or enshrined into state law for that particular state, which is why I'm not going to mention the state right now. But I've heard that is a practice, and quite frankly, I believe that it's absolutely a racist practice. It's almost like if someone was running your credit score every day, running a credit check every day.
Well, that's like them adding ethnicity to the form on the federal form. Why would you? What's the purpose? What is the purpose of that? Now I know what I think. They want to keep track of who got what.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Hey, Chad. Just because Mike, I think you had this question too at one point. Okay, it's called National African American Gun Association. Do you allow other races to join?
Other races absolutely can join, provided that they are in line with our principles and values. We won't shut anyone out, but if there's alignment of values, that's what we look for in our members. Alignment of values, right? Meaning you support the initiatives that we have in terms of our mission statement, education, exposure, motivation, being, making sure that it's a safe space, so to speak, for the, to exercise the Second Amendment from the lens of the African American experience. We, in my club, we have people who are married to folks of different races, and they're members. We have people who are of Hispanic origin. We have folks who are, it's definitely a multicultural organization, right? We don't turn anyone away, except if you don't align with our values and principles and our moral, our morals, and, the core of who we are as an organization, then we might not be the best fit for you.
What about, we were talking earlier about different scenarios in children. There's a gentleman in, I can't remember where he's from. Tony, where's that guy from? The guy that arms his kid.
Say that again. I didn't.
There's a gentleman that arms his kids.
You mean the guy in Florida?
Derek Grace. Derek Grace.
Yeah.
Derek Grace.
Derek Grace arms his children with guns. If hit that house, you can get shot by an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, or him. So
or his wife.
How do you guys feel about children and parents teaching their children or arming them for their safety as well?
Alan, do you want to go ahead and speak to that?
Well, I haven't had that experience, but if the kids are getting the education that the organizational leaders are putting out there, if the children are responsible enough and guns are otherwise secure in the household, I don't see any problem with it. I mean, people can run in a household anytime, and if the kids are properly trained and they know where the guns are, I don't see any problem with them, depending on their age. But we have had situations where, just in Philadelphia, not that long ago, there was a kid who thwarted a house, what do you call it, house invasion, simply because the invader saw the kid holding the gun. He didn't have to shoot anybody, but the invader turned around and left the premises because he saw the kid standing there with a gun. And apparently, he was postured in such a way that the perpetrator thought that he knew how to handle it. So I don't see any problem with it, depending on the age. That's the thing.
I think it's no different than teaching your child, your son or your daughter, or your nephew or your niece how to drive.
Exactly.
It's no different. You want to first teach them the safety.
Yes.
And all that comes with that. So if those kids, from their toddlers, they see their daddies with guns, and he's a responsible person, clearly those kids can tell you what ammunition is what, but they're blindfolded. Yeah. So they can pick it apart and put it back together before God got the message. So there's I'm sure people could pick that apart, but I certainly would rather teach my children and my nephews and nieces about safety first. And so they're not afraid. When they see one, they're not afraid of it. They know what to do.
One of the things that we absolutely encourage is to get children involved in firearms kind of in a staged approach, right? So the first stage is to make sure that they understand the basics of, if you see this firearm, don't touch it, go away from it, tell an adult. Basic, simple stuff, right? At a young age. Then you can stage them over and migrate them over into understanding what those safety rules are, right? Make sure they memorize those before they even begin to pick up. At least I did with my son and daughter. I made sure they memorized those rules before they even got to touch one of my firearms.
Exactly.
So that they knew if they were out and about, not in the home, they, number one, knew not to touch it. Number two, they knew if they had to do so, what the safe handling rules are, right?
Yes.
So understanding what the safe handling rules are is one stage. Then another stage is take them out to the shooting range and have them in a controlled and monitored environment and train them how to shoot, right? After they've been able to demonstrate proficiency in knowing what to do at one stage, then knowing the safety rules, then from there you can teach them how to shoot and do so in a controlled and safe manner so it dispels or demystifies firearms.
Yes.
No, everybody.
Right?
Everybody doesn't feel that way. I have my own personal, opinion about it, and I think I would arm my dog. Cat, dog, fish, everything. Get a gun. But some people feel, we've had this conversation, and I talked with a few people who are parents, and they feel like that's too much pressure on the kid. We should be protecting them. So, everybody's got their own way of thinking. What would you say to people, and everybody can jump in on this. What would you say to a parent who just thinks it's a bad idea, who might live in a crime-ridden area or who might live in a well-off area, but for sure, we know we need to be armed. We know this. What would you say to that parent or that person that is struggling with that, and try to not convince them, but get them to understand the purpose of this, the stages that you were talking about, Chad, the stuff you were talking about, Winger? How would you guys go about that? I'll start with you, Chad.
I would say the first thing that I would do or say to them would be to encourage them that what they feel is best for their child is okay. if they don't feel like they want their child to be around guns, if they themselves don't feel comfortable with firearms, it's not my job or my responsibility to convince you otherwise that, hey, you need to do this, or you're not black enough, or you need to do this, or for whatever reason, right? That's not my job or responsibility, nor is that my objective, right? What I would say is, it's okay if you don't want to do this. It's okay if you don't want your child to do this. But understand that there may come a time when your child may be faced with a situation where this could be a real possibility. And you can't monitor them all the time. And then just simply ask the question, would you rather them know what to do and do so safely? Or would you rather them not have a clue what to do and do something to hurt themselves or hurt someone else? The choice is absolutely the parents. I fully believe in parental autonomy in raising their children. But I would just present it to them in a way from a safety perspective. That's how I would approach it.
Gotcha. Wayne, you've been quiet up there in block number one.
Yeah, I mean, because I straddle the fence with that. I do, you know what I mean? And I do feel everyone needs to protect themselves. And sometimes, I guess when it comes to me, I feel a kid needs to be a kid. And I am one of them that says that I'm supposed to protect them as far as the house is concerned. You know, so if someone comes up in here wrong, they ain't going out like they came in. So I kind of feel that's a parent's responsibility. And like I said, battle with it, you know what I mean? So with me, I need to learn more and know more before I can take a stand and say, this is what I want my kids to do, or this is how I want my kids to be. All my kids are grown now, so maybe I'm looking at grandkids. You know what I mean? So I don't have to protect my home like that, but I understand other parents that need to protect their home like that, or need to, teach their kids that. We're in a different time now where we have to do that with our kids. Maybe years ago, we didn't have to. When I was growing up and I was raising my kid, he didn't need to know how to shoot a gun. Mm-hmm. It was because it wasn't like it is today. You know what I mean? So, I my thoughts can change on that. I can agree to disagree, with some things, but I can't say I'm totally agreeable with a kid at a certain age learning how to use a firearm.
I think if I could jump in for a second, I hear what you're saying, Wayne, but there's other dynamics to that. One, if you grow up in the country, in a rural area, and going fishing is what you do, you're going to teach your child how to fish. If you shoot, you're going to teach your child how to shoot. So there's different pieces to that. You know what I mean? But I hear what you're saying, though, bro. I would rather I got 3 girls on my own and a bunch of other kids who call me dad. But I would much rather my daughters know how to shoot and never have to own a firearm than me not teaching them what to do with a firearm. They know the safety of the firearm and what to do with it.
I think one of the things that we probably should do more often is, again, even if we are not going to engage in shooting sports or self-defense training or even training our kids up that way, I think at a very minimum, we should normalize it, right? Yes. Meaning we should normalize firearms for them. It's normal in other communities, just like hunting or fishing is, depending on what region you're in. We should normalize firearms, right? Normal people, guns are normal and normal people have guns, right? And that should be true for Black folks as well. It shouldn't be a thing where we have to consider the quote unquote weight of Blackness before making the decision to want to be self-determined, right? Yes, I think it's something that we should make a thing of regularity instead of making it seem like it's a brass ring or a spiked bat or something that we are reaching for, so to speak.
Well, I definitely understand where Wayne's coming from. It's a tough situation. And like I said, I would want to arm everyone, but I've never thought, we get to this point, but I get to this point. But, I definitely understand Wayne.
But hey, Mike, I mean, just look at an example. You know how sometimes you think your kids are ready to do certain things, and then bam, comes to find out, oh, wow, he wasn't really ready. I mean, that's one thing I with, because
Absolutely.
how do you really know, are they mature and ready to handle, like, you know, situations like that before they grab a gun and run out in the community because they done had a little street fight, you know what I mean, and they lost it. You know what I mean? They lost with the hands. So now this little 8, 9-year-old, he know where the gun is at the house. He just got embarrassed out on the streets. I think they're the kind of some of the things, you know, and I agree with everybody else. That has to do with training too. You know what I'm saying? But look at some of the, you know, kids that, you know, might not be able, you might think they're ready. You know what I mean? You might think they can handle it, but then one little thing happens, bam. Now my child or my son's in a situation because I taught them how to do something, but they didn't use it in the right way.
Right. Alan, what's your take on that?
Well, you know, Chad made a good point about, you know, the area, the location, the region. What do people do for sports? Hunting, fishing, that sort of thing. But it starts with leadership. And if the parent and the leader has no gun philosophy and is not interested in guns, it's pointless to try and teach the kids about it if the parent and the leader is not into that sort of thing. But when you're talking about having an organization that's an organization where family is included, training and education is ongoing. And the longer the child is around grown folks who are handling firearms responsibly, the more that they take away from it. But I don't think you can shove something like that down the child's throat if they're not used to being around it.
Gotcha. Very good, gentlemen. I want to bring up a little bit about the about Chad, about Black Bottom Club. Tell us a little bit about what the Black Bottom Club is about.
So it was co-founded by myself and a brother named Kofi Kenyatta in 2017. Myself and Kofi, we had worked together on previous different things. We worked before, the first time we met was actually as conflict resolution counselors in some of the Detroit public schools. We worked with, I hate using this phrase, but I'll use it for lack of a better one right now, at-risk children in schools who have behavior issues. And so we work for a behavior modification program and really helping them navigate the things that were going on outside of school as well as in school in terms of how they could handle things. So that's how him and I first met. We then started another group together, and we remained in contact. And then after the Philando Castile shooting or murder, and then the subsequent acquittal of the officer, I reached out to him and said, all right, so there's no organization speaking to us. And we saw a video from another organization who shall remain nameless right now. But they had a video showing uprisings and saying that, you know, we were, you know, people were enemies of freedom and things like that, people who were protesting for Black lives. And at that point, I said that, okay, we probably need to start something on our own. And so we found the National African American Gun Association. We saw that group, and I asked the president and vice president, hey, how can we start a chapter in Detroit? And so we started a chapter in Detroit in July 2017. Since then, we started, we had 2 meetings and we may have had maybe 5 members. As of today, we have about 90 members in our chapter. We got quite a few over the last few days, but our ethos is defend, educate, and train, meaning defend and advocate for our Second Amendment rights, whether it be engaging with politicians in a positive way. We don't, you know, scream at politicians or do anything like that, but we engage them through back channeling and trying to work with them in ways that make sense for us. We advocate for a Second Amendment among our communities, you know, for if not the exercising of the right, we always are going to advocate for the fact that we don't, even if you decide not to carry or own a firearm, we want to make sure that you at least don't advocate against our right to do so. We educate on the Black tradition of arms. We teach a lot, you know, every meeting or every other meeting, I have a segment where we talk about a historic figure who used firearms to defend themselves or their community or their right to vote or whatever the case may be. So that's part of the education piece of it, as well as we do a lot of safety education as well in the community. We do, like I said earlier, free safety and legal seminars every quarter. We have a lawyer come in and do the legal portion, and then we have range safety officers and instructors do the safety portion. And then training, obviously, that encompasses things like our Ladies Range Day. We have instructors who put together training curriculums for us. We have instructors who come from other states to conduct day-long training on different firearm platforms. And a lot of that's the firearm piece of it. We also are heavily engaged in the community as well. So we'll do things like register folks to vote, like we did in 2018, and are doing this year. We're pointing folks to the state of Michigan. You can register online now. So we do a lot of civic engagement in that way. We are part of a coalition with other organizations in the city of Detroit that do things like pass out the safety masks for folks now dealing with COVID-19 and make sure they can go out in public. We have a curriculum that we're developing. It's still in process. And right before COVID hit, we were in our pilot group of young men. We were teaching them on situational awareness, right? And being situationally aware as a young man in the city of Detroit, or a young man in America, and leading up to potentially introducing them to live fire and trap shooting at the range that we are members of here. So it's a combination or a confluence of the community activism and community engagement and community service, along with the firearms training, the firearms advocacy, and the safety work as well.
Gotcha. One of my final questions, and I want to pass it, go around the table here, is if I want to join, what comes with my membership? Chad.
I'll say this: the biggest benefit to joining NAGA, as I said right at the beginning, it's being yourself and in the full glory of your Blackness around other Black folks who do what you like doing. I don't think that can be overstated enough as a benefit, right? There's a couple of discounts with different vendors that you have as well, just like any other organization that you can join. There's opportunities for training as well. But I think for me, the biggest benefit that comes with your membership is having a community of folks who, even if you don't agree on everything, you understand what it is to be Black in America. And let me not please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I don't want to racialize it in a way that it makes it seem like, other folks are excluded, because again, we are a multicultural organization. But I think there's something to be said about the fact that this is a group that was founded by Black folks for Black folks. And if you're down with that, you can be a part of, as long as you're not running afoul or running counter to what our values and our mission are. But just having that community of folks who resemble you, both phenotypically, physically, and in some cases ideologically, as it pertains to what your Blackness means to you and to the rest of us, it cannot be overstated enough. I think that's going to be the primary benefit. And again, the education is huge.
Gotcha.
I think,
Tony.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't remember if it was Chad or Kyle. Did I get that right?
Alan.
Chad or Alan, I'm sorry.
Alan.
Said, but it was three simple words, and that was alignment of values.
That was Chad.
That was okay. One of the things my mom taught me a long time ago when I was a kid is that first you have to learn what you want, then learn what you want, and make your decisions, govern yourself accordingly. Quick story: when I was a kid, my mother was taking me to the babysitter. I was probably in the 4th grade, or taking me to my cousin's house before me go to school. And these guys were outside whistling at my mom. She was dressed up real jazzy. And I had my cowboy outfit on, and I had them double 6 shooters. And they were whistling at my mom, and without, in retrospect now, I pulled them out and started firing the cap gun. And needless to say, my mom whooped my behind. But when I became an adult, that conversation came up, and she apologized for that, because she said she realized I was just trying to protect my mom. And so I'm big on protection. And you know, I think as Black folks, we need to come to terms with some realities that we do need. That we, according to the law, have the right to protect ourselves.
I agree.
Okay.
Oh yeah, also for everybody that do carry a firearm, we do have, I have a license to carry pouch that you use in your vehicle, the same as a reaching pouch. So it alerts the officer that know that you are carrying a firearm, so it can be handled in the right situation during a traffic stop. So if you get a chance, go to our website, Not Reaching, get yourself a pouch.
Very good.
I do want to just say one thing real quick. I know that a lot of the impetus or the beginning of the conversation was about Brother Ahmaud Arbery, but I do want to make a special point to make sure that we acknowledge the killing of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. Who was killed in an erroneous no-knock raid, police raid.
Wasn't even supposed to be. Wasn't even her house that they were looking for.
Exactly, wasn't there, and she was the victim of this. And oftentimes we get caught up on, you know, the men who were killed by racists and police, but we also need to make sure that we account for and protect and defend and advocate for the women who are killed by police as well. We cannot ignore them because, again, women are the Black men's greatest strength, right? And we have to honor and protect that and value that as well, and speak up for it when it's happening to them too. So absolutely, rest in peace to Breonna Taylor, and thoughts and prayers are with her family. If there's a group in Kentucky that may be able to assist, I hope they're reaching out. But we cannot ignore our sisters in this fight.
Absolutely.
Any last words, Alan Kyle?
You know, I was listening to Chad, and I don't have the same experience with camaraderie that he has had over a period of time. I was really looking forward to our inaugural convention, but since the virus decided to change our plans, I'm going to have to revisit this experience tonight and try and make myself a little bit more available. And maybe, like Chad suggested, maybe I will start to try and get something going in Chester County.
We're going to make sure that you get that. We're going to make sure that happens for you. I sent you my email, so please reach out to me. During this whole stream, I've been in contact with a couple of folks in headquarters, and they're all in agreement that we're going to get you the help you need.
Okay, well, I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Chad, Tony's going to be next, so go ahead and get his district signed up. I'll probably be under his branch.
Hey, Chad, once when you join NAGA, do they send you like a membership card or something? I got an email. I took care of that while I was here, by the way.
Right.
Do they send you a membership card? Because also, if you could too, talk about USCCA and what they do.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I'm sending you an email or a chat message with my email address so you can reach out to me directly. So to answer your question about if we send you a physical card, previously we used to send out physical cards. Then physical cards became too cumbersome in terms of determining or dealing with the manufacturer of them. So we went to digital membership cards. So if you have a smartphone or an email, you get a digital membership card in your email. Or if you log into your membership portal, you'll get a digital membership card that way. So that's what you get in place of a physical membership card. I've been a member for a while. I still have my physical one. I don't have enough space in my wallet for it now, but I do keep it. I'm going to keep it forever. But now we moved over to digital membership cards. Now, you asked about the USCCA.
Yes.
What was your question about what the USCCA is or what they do?
I mean, it took, you know, I was watching, I stumbled into a video about the guy in the barbershop.
Yeah.
And that was what kind of took me to the next level to think about it. I was like, well, if I'm going to own a gun, I need to have some kind of insurance. And so I was looking at different things, necessarily to have insurance on the firearm itself, but in case I had to use it, what was out there. And so it's not so much about having gun insurance as it is about having protection in the event that you have to discharge your weapon to protect yourself or defend yourself and your family.
No, I totally understand. So USCCA is a fine organization. You get training. They have virtual training. I myself am a USCCA instructor. So I do believe in the organization in terms of what they stand for in terms of training and the legal product that they offer, right? The training, in my opinion, is really, really top notch. But I guess what your question was about was more about the membership coverage in terms of the legal side of it, right?
Yeah,
So,
why should I be a member, or what value does the USCCA have for people out here? I'm already straight. I want you to share.
right. So I have to be fair here. So I'll talk about the USCCA, but I also want to talk about a company called Firearms Legal Protection. Firearmslegal.com is their website, but they're a company that's similar to USCCA. They don't offer all the training material, but they offer the legal coverage that USCCA has. I think it's a little bit better because it's uncapped attorney fees. Well, let me not say that it's better. I'll say it's different in that it has uncapped attorney fees, and when you call them, you get directly on the phone with a lawyer to protect attorney-client privilege if you have a situation where you need to deploy your firearm and reach to somebody, right? So firearmslegal.com is that website. They're a fantastic company. Our gun club does a lot with them. And we have a lawyer from Firearms Legal come out and do our legal seminars for us for free. But with that being said, I am a USCCA trainer, and I do believe in their product and their training. And so as it pertains to why you need to have some type of firearm insurance, right? Whether it's USCCA, Firearms Legal Protection, or any number of them out there. I'll just ask you a simple question. Do you currently, right now today, can you look in your bank account and see that you got $50,000 of disposable income? Okay, if you don't have $50,000 of disposable income, then you need to have a Firearms Legal Protection or a USCCA or a US Law Shield or one of those types of companies that will cover your legal expenses and cover your bail should you get arrested for defending your family or defending your life. Because right now, the going rate for an attorney retainer is a minimum for a case like that is a minimum $50,000. And then you have to consider bail money, right? So if you don't got that sitting in your bank right now, you absolutely need to have some type of a coverage that will protect you in the case where you need to defend yourself. You need to have someone who's going to defend you in court while you defend yourself and your loved ones in the house or in the streets.
Very good.
Very
good. Alan King, Alan Kyle, any last words before we leave, sir?
Well, appreciate all that I have heard. I've learned something, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this forum. Everybody that had something to say, it's still resonating in my ears, and I look forward to getting caught up with Chad and the other folks at headquarters area, and we'll move forward. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
If you want to join the National African American Gun Association, go to www.naaga.co, and you can join the National African American Gun Association there. You can find the chapter in your area that you want to join, and you can go from there and get going with a group of like-minded folks.
Very good. Tony, any last words from you, sir?
Yes, sir. If anyone out there in digital TV land has any suggestions for anything that you'd like for us to talk about, certainly you can email us at kingsofconversation57@gmail. Or if you know who we are, you can hit us up on our Facebook page or any of that. Also, I want to give a shout out to my family down in Louisiana. Send me this shirt, Cajun Nation Seasoning. That's CajunNation.com. And let them know Cousin Tony sent you out there. This stuff is low in sodium and it's good seasoning. Check it out.
That's what that.
Wayne
Carter.
Yeah, I want to thank both Chad and Mr. Kyle. Y'all see me calling him Mr. Kyle. So y'all got to excuse that.
You guys have a little history, right?
So I just want to thank both of them for actually, giving their time this evening. And again, I want to say, Not Reaching, I have a license to carry.
Absolutely.
So you can go to notreaching.com. This was a very good segment. Enjoyed it. Look forward to more.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
And I definitely want to thank Alan Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and for
my pleasure.
A part of this segment. Chad King. We've interviewed you before on Radar Radio. As always, you are a home run hitter. You know your stuff, man, and we definitely are glad that you joined us tonight, along with Tony and Wayne and myself. I want to thank Jackie for recommending both of you for tonight's special edition segment. And I hope that this educates, I've been educated tonight, and I hope this educates people that see this about considering firearms in the home. It's getting to be tough out here with race relations and things that are going on, and you don't know where people's heads and hearts are anymore. So it's just best to protect yourself if you want to live, and protect your family if you want them to live, and just be able to at least protect yourself. That's the only other way. It's just no other way. It's nothing else to say. But you know, if you want to live, you got to be able to protect yourself, and if you're going to do that, you'll need to do it with a firearm.
Well stated.
Butter knife.
You do it with your head first. You do it with your head first, and then let that dictate what you got to do with a firearm if you need to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, guys, thank you guys all for joining us tonight. Any last words before we leave? Anybody? Anything?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And Mr. Kyle, we're gonna get you squared away. I promise that.
All right, I want to remind folks we have 76 plus active chapters, and about 17 states are without an organization, so they're available.
Excellent.
And we hope that people who hear what we say tonight become interested, and there's a chapter.
I have one question before we leave. Tony.
Yes, sir.
When you gonna start your chapter?
Well, you know, the closest chapter to me is actually down in Chesterfield, Virginia. But since it appears that my journey will take me closer to the great state of Georgia, I don't think I'll have a problem with that.
Exactly. All right, guys, have a good night. We thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.
God bless
We
everybody.
thank you.
Asian Nation.